When people ask why I don't go on family vacations, I just shrug and say I'm not really the group trip type. But the truth? The truth is a little messy. My name's Blake. I'm 35, and for the past decade, I've been the family's invisible man, the one left off the flight itinerary, the one who gets a souvenir keychain while everyone else has sunburns and inside jokes. I wasn't always excluded, but once I started saying no to handouts and yes to a simpler life, the invites stopped. They said I was too boring, too broke, not fun enough to justify the extra ticket. And honestly, for a while, I believed them. It didn't used to sting as much. At first, I was in survival mode, barely scraping by, freelancing in tech support while juggling odd jobs. I rented a tiny one-bedroom above a laundromat that smelled like detergent 24/7 and had paper-thin walls. I had dreams, sure, but they felt laughably far away. So when my sister Leah sent group photos from Italy, her husband Max grinning with a glass of wine, their two kids posing in matching linen outfits, my parents beaming with gelato, I hit like and kept scrolling. I told myself it was fine. They'd invite me next time. Next time never came. The real shift happened around year 3. It was my mom's 60th birthday, and the family planned a big cruise to celebrate. Caribbean, all-inclusive, full spa, kids' activities, the whole 9 yards. I heard about it from my cousin Jamie, not from Leah or my parents. When I asked my mom casually about it on the phone, she said, "Oh honey, we didn't think you'd be comfortable spending that kind of money." No offer to help. No discussion. Just quiet disqualification, like I was a stray dog barking at the gate of the country club. I wish I could say I stood up for myself, but I didn't. I let the phone call end with some polite laugh and no worries. Then I spent that week watching YouTube videos on how to fix broken MacBooks so I could make rent. At night, I'd lay awake wondering if they'd ever see me as more than the family failure. I wasn't a felon. I didn't cause drama. I just didn't make enough money. And in their eyes, that was apparently unforgivable. Leah, especially, had a talent for subtle cruelty. She'd say things like, "It's a shame you never travel, Blake. You'd really benefit from seeing the world." Or, "You should try saving for a trip sometime. It's such a mental refresh." This from someone who had never once worked a full-time job since marrying Max. She made passive-aggressive an art form. At one Thanksgiving, she pulled out her phone mid-dinner and showed the entire table a slideshow of their trip to the Maldives. "We thought of inviting you," she said, looking directly at me. "But then Max said you'd probably be too busy with, what is it you're doing again? Online stuff." I clenched my jaw, smiled politely, and excused myself to the kitchen. My dad followed me in and gave me one of his classic man-to-man talks, which usually just meant him defending Leah. "You know your sister doesn't mean harm," he said. "She just lives in a different world. Don't take it personally." But I did. Every time. I took it personally because it was personal. They didn't invite me because they didn't see value in me. And that kind of judgment, coming from people who are supposed to love you unconditionally, it carves something out of you, leaves a quiet hollow where warmth used to be. Year after year, the pattern repeated. New trips, new destinations, new reasons why I was never on the list. Leah once threw a tantrum in our family group chat because I forgot to wish her youngest a happy birthday. I'd been working a double shift, and my phone died. She ended her rant with, "Maybe if you actually showed up for your family, you'd get included more." That one stuck, like a rusty nail in my gut. So I started disappearing. Not physically. I was still around, still answering mom's check-in texts and attending the occasional holiday dinner. But emotionally, I checked out. I stopped trying to prove I mattered. I poured everything I had into my work. I taught myself front-end dev, then back-end, then security. I freelanced for startups, then gradually got my own clients. It was slow, lonely, unstable, but it was mine. And somewhere around year 7, things began to click. I got one client, a travel agency startup, that exploded. Then another. Then a referral. By year 9, I had a proper company, a remote team, and the kind of financial breathing room I never imagined I'd have. I didn't tell anyone in the family. Not because I wanted revenge. Not yet. I just wanted something that was mine, free from their judgment, their assumptions. For the first time in my adult life, I felt in control. I had options. Then came the photo. Leah posted it in the family group chat. Her and Max with the kids, smiling in front of a luxury villa in Santorini. Caption: "One last trip before the kids start school again. Life's too short not to treat yourself, I didn't respond. Just scrolled past it like I always did. But something inside me snapped. Not out of jealousy. Out of exhaustion. I was tired of being invisible. Tired of being underestimated. Tired of the lie that I was too boring, when really, I'd just stopped tap dancing for their approval. That night, I did something impulsive. I pulled up my browser, searched oceanfront villas for sale, and started browsing. Not to prove anything. Not yet. Just to see. I clicked through listings in Bali, the Amalfi Coast, and finally, the Bahamas. There it was. A 2-bedroom beachfront villa, modern glass design, private stretch of sand. Staggering price tag, but not out of reach. I booked a flight the next week to see it in person. And standing there, barefoot on the warm sand, watching the tide roll in, something inside me shifted. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about proving anything to Leah or my parents. I was thinking about peace. About mornings with coffee and ocean breeze. About writing code with the sound of waves in the background. I bought it 2 days later. Didn't tell a soul. For months, it was my secret. I furnished it slowly, hired a local team to manage upkeep, and kept working remotely like always. My apartment above the laundromat. Still mine. Still home base. But the villa? That was mine in a different way. It represented everything they said I couldn't be. Successful, adventurous, interesting. I didn't need their validation. I had something better. Something real. Then Leah found out. And everything started to unravel. She found out the way Leah always found things out, by snooping, then pretending she stumbled across it by accident. It started with a voicemail. I was working late, deep in debugging a security plugin for one of my newer clients, when I saw the notification. One missed call from Leah. One voicemail. Unusual. She almost never called me unless something was wrong, or she needed something disguised as a favor. I put my phone on speaker and played it while I kept typing. Her voice was cheerful, suspiciously so. Blake. Hey, little brother. I just saw the wildest thing. Max's coworker just came back from a trip to the Bahamas and said he met a guy named Blake who bought a beachfront villa there and works in tech. You wouldn't happen to be that Blake, would you? LOL. Call me. I didn't. Not immediately. I just stared at the terminal in front of me, the cursor blinking like it knew something was about to change. Because here's the thing about Leah. She never lets go of a bone once she bites into it. And if she knew, really knew, then this little bubble I'd built, this peaceful, private slice of joy, was about to be invaded by the very people who had spent years telling me I wasn't enough. The next morning, my phone blew up. She texted 3 times before 9 a.m. Leah, Blake, you didn't tell me you bought a villa? That's amazing. Leah, seriously, we're so proud of you. That must have cost a fortune. You've been holding out on us. Leah, we have to come visit. The kids would love it. We've been talking about going somewhere tropical this summer anyway. That last text gave me pause. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a setup. I typed back. Yeah, I got a place there. Still settling in. Hope you're well. Short. Simple. Non-invite. 10 minutes later, my mom called. Oh honey, Leah just told me about your house in the Bahamas. That's incredible. Why didn't you tell us? There was no anger in her voice. No jealousy. Just that strained maternal tone. The one that always kicked in whenever Leah didn't get her way. A familiar prelude to guilt tripping. I sighed. Because I knew exactly how this was going to go. There was a pause. What do you mean? Mom, you've all made it pretty clear over the years what you think of me. I wanted something for myself. That's it. You're being dramatic, she said quickly. No one ever said you weren't part of the family. Really? Then why was I never invited anywhere? You know money was tight. For me. Not for the rest of you. Another pause. I just wish you'd shared this sooner, she said finally, dropping the sugar from her voice. We're family, Blake. That word, family, sounded so cheap coming from her mouth. A card they only played when it suited them. By the end of the day, the group chat had lit up with congratulations. Fake praise. Comments like, knew you had it in you. And wow, Mr. Secret Millionaire. All jokes. All designed to box me back into the family role they were comfortable with. The underdog who suddenly got lucky. Then Leah sent the message that flipped the switch in my brain. Leah. So, we're thinking July for the Bahamas trip. The kids are off school, and Max can get time off. We'll cover our own flights, of course. Just need a place to stay? Can we reserve the villa? No, would you mind? No, is it available? Just can we reserve it? Like it was a hotel I owed her. I didn't reply. I closed the chat and let it sit for a day. Then 2. On the third day, Leah called. "Hey," she's saying when I picked up. "You've been MIA. Everything okay?" I kept my voice neutral. "Busy with work." She fake laughed. "You and your work." Seriously though, about the trip, the kids are so excited. I showed them a few pictures of the Bahamas and said we might be staying at Uncle Blake's house. You should have seen their faces. "You told them that already?" "Well, yeah. I figured it wouldn't be an issue. It's not like you live there full time." I let that sink in. "You know," I said slowly, "it's funny. For years, you all said I was too boring to vacation with. Now suddenly I have a place, and I'm interesting again." There was silence on the line for a second. Then a sigh. "Blake, don't be like that. You know we love you. We just didn't think you were into that kind of thing. And you always acted like you were too busy to travel." "I acted like that," I repeated. "Or I just didn't have the money to go and no one ever offered?" "Why are you bringing up the past?" she snapped, the cheerful tone cracking. "This is supposed to be a happy thing. You finally did something amazing and we just want to celebrate it with you." "You mean use it?" "Wow, you're really going to be petty about this." "No, I'm going to be honest. The villa's not available. Not for you." The silence that followed was absolute. "You're kidding." "I'm not. You're seriously going to tell your own nieces that they can't stay at your house?" "You already told them that." "Not me." "You are being unbelievably selfish," she hissed. "You finally have something nice and your first instinct is to keep it from your family? After everything we've done for you." I laughed. "What have you done for me, Leah?" "Mocked me. Excluded me. Acted like I didn't matter because I wasn't rich or loud or flashy enough for you." "That's not fair." "It's the truth." She hung up. But the fallout had only just begun. The next day, Mom called again. So did Dad. Both urging me to be the bigger person. My dad even said, "Come on, Blake, it's not like Leah meant any harm. She's just used to doing things a certain way." "Yeah," I said, used to getting what she wants without asking. But what really made my blood boil came 3 days later. Leah posted a photo on Instagram. The caption read, "When your own brother has a villa in the Bahamas and refuses to share it with his family, guess we'll have to settle for a resort. Some people forget who loved them when they had nothing." I saw it. Everyone saw it. She didn't tag me, but she didn't have to. The comments were filled with passive support. "Ugh, that's so wrong. You're amazing, sis." His loss. "I swear, success changes people. That's why you don't help people who forget where they came from." The knife was in, and she was twisting it in public. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. I just watched as the narrative got rewritten, the same way it always had, with Leah as the victim and me as the selfish villain. But something was different now, because this time I had power, and I wasn't going to stay quiet. Not anymore. The day after Leah's Instagram post, I walked into my favorite little cafe, the one where they know my name, my usual order, and that I like the corner booth by the window, and something felt off. The barista, Maya, barely looked at me when she handed over my latte. No smile, no chat, just a quiet, "Here you go." I took it, confused, and sat down. Then I saw it. On my phone, under the post I had still refused to comment on, was a new comment from someone I vaguely remembered from high school. "Is this the same Blake that works at Juno Space Tech? I thought he was always super sweet. Sad to hear he turned into this." The next comment. "LMAO, he ghosted me when I asked for help with my small biz website." Typical. Then another. And another. A spiral of assumptions, old acquaintances, and vague subtweets that somehow painted me, the guy who had kept his head down and quietly rebuilt his life, as some kind of arrogant tech bro who made it big and slammed the door behind him. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just a family fight anymore. Leah had gone full smear campaign. She didn't care about staying at the villa. Not really. What she wanted was control. Control of the story, the image, the version of reality where she was the thoughtful sister, and I was the bitter, stingy recluse who forgot his roots. It stung. More than I wanted to admit. I didn't respond. Again. But that silence, it didn't feel powerful anymore. It felt like defeat. Like I was letting her define me in the eyes of everyone we'd ever known. And it kept spreading. Subtle jabs from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Messages from mutual friends that danced around the topic. Ending with, "But I hope you two work it out." We weren't two kids arguing over toys. We were adults. And I was losing a war I didn't even start. That weekend, my mom invited me to dinner. I almost said no, but guilt, as always, got the better of me. I showed up to her house, brought a bottle of wine, and tried to act normal. The second course hadn't even been served when she dropped her fork and sighed heavily. "Blake," she said, "I really wish you'd reconsider." I didn't look up. "We're really doing this here? She's your sister. She's a bully. She's family." I set my glass down a little too hard. "Then maybe family should stop treating me like I'm disposable." Mom pursed her lips. "She's hurt. She's embarrassed," I corrected. "Because for once, she can't control me." Dad cleared his throat. "You've changed, Blake." That hit harder than I expected. "You mean I finally stood up for myself?" "No," he said, calm and firm. "You used to be kind, humble. Now you're hard and cold. That's not the son I raised." I left after dessert. I didn't raise my voice, didn't slam the door, but I didn't say goodbye either. Because something broke that night. Not a loud snap, not a clean tear. It was a slow unraveling. The realization that no matter how hard I worked, no matter how successful I became, I would always be the disappointment in their eyes unless I let them write my story for me. That was my rock bottom. Not the years of struggling with bills. Not the nights I ate instant noodles and taught myself how to code. Not the rejection or exclusion. This was worse. Achieving everything I thought would make me finally feel worthy, only to find myself still standing alone, still being painted as the villain in a family saga I never asked to be in. I stopped replying to the group chat, stopped answering calls. Even Maya at the cafe noticed I wasn't coming in as often. She texted me once. "Everything okay? You haven't been around." I didn't answer. I was tired. Tired of explaining myself. Tired of defending boundaries that should have been respected without needing a fight. So I went quiet, but not idle. I threw myself into work, not out of ambition this time, but out of necessity. The only space that felt like mine was the digital one. Lines of code, client calls, product roadmaps. I expanded my team, hired 2 junior devs, outsourced some design work, rebuilt the website for my business from scratch. Each improvement, each deliverable, was a brick in the wall I was building around myself. Safe, secure, professional. Then came the message that changed everything. It was from someone I didn't know. A woman named Alyssa. She introduced herself as a freelance travel blogger who had stayed in a neighboring villa in the Bahamas. She had heard about mine from a local caretaker I'd hired. Said he'd spoken highly of how I handled things, how kind and fair I was. She wanted to do a feature. A write-up on hidden gem vacation homes owned by unexpected people. At first, I was hesitant. The last thing I wanted was more attention. But something about her message felt different. She wasn't looking to expose me. She was genuinely interested. Curious. Kind. I agreed. She flew out that month and spent 3 days photographing the space, interviewing me about my work, my life, my reasons for choosing that spot. I was cautious, measured, didn't mention my family. Kept it about the journey. She called the piece The Quiet Builder. How one man created his dream home by saying no to the noise. The article went mildly viral. Tech circles picked it up. Then travel blogs. Then a few entrepreneur pages. It wasn't explosive, but it was enough to shift something in my world. Clients began referencing it during onboarding. Old acquaintances sent messages, not the backhanded kind, but real ones. "Didn't know you were doing all this, man. Respect." Even Maya printed a copy and taped it to the register. For the first time, the narrative wasn't being twisted by someone else. It was mine. And I realized, in that quiet rise, that maybe I didn't need revenge to win. Maybe just living fully, freely, and without apology was enough. Maybe that was the real power. But that peaceful clarity didn't last long. Because Leah wasn't done. A week after the article dropped, she texted me directly for the first time in a month. "Leah, nice article. Didn't realize we were painting ourselves as the poor, noisy family now. Cute narrative." Followed by another. "Leah, also, FYI, Mom and Dad saw it. Dad's not thrilled. Says you're making the family look bad." Then, "Leah, guess you'll be too busy being famous to come to Dad's birthday party." There it was again. The twisting, the guilt, the bait. And this time, I didn't ignore it. I replied, "The villa isn't a reward. It's a boundary. I didn't create distance. You did. I just finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt." She didn't respond. But something told me the silence wouldn't last. Because when people like Leah feel power slipping, they don't let go. They escalate. And I had the uneasy feeling she wasn't done trying to reclaim control. Not by a long shot. By the time April rolled around, I had fully transitioned to working remotely from the villa in the Bahamas. At first, it was supposed to be temporary, just a short break from the noise and tension back home. But the longer I stayed, the clearer it became. I didn't want to leave. I didn't need to leave. There was something healing about waking up to the sound of waves instead of traffic or texts laced with guilt. I started running again, reading again, cooking actual meals instead of rushing through takeout. I even bought a drone and began learning aerial photography, something I hadn't made time for in years. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't building things to prove anything. I was just living. But peace has a funny way of highlighting the fractures you left behind. And every so often, something would remind me that the story Leah had written, the one where I was cold, selfish, and ungrateful, was still quietly being passed around. I'd get an email from a distant cousin asking if it was true I banned Leah from my house. Or I'd get tagged in a passive-aggressive post about people who change when they get money. I ignored most of them. I really did. But there's only so long you can pretend you don't hear someone knocking when they start kicking the door. What finally pushed me to act wasn't something Leah said. It was what she did. One morning, my caretaker in the Bahamas, Luis, an older gentleman with a quiet dignity and an encyclopedic knowledge of the island, called me out of the blue. His voice, usually warm and steady, sounded strained. "Senor Blake," he said, "I'm sorry to disturb you, but there was a woman and a man. They showed up today asking to see the house." My stomach tightened. "What? Who?" "She said she was your sister, Leah, and her husband." I froze. "Wait, they flew here. She said you told her they could come anytime. She had screenshots, messages. I told her the property was private, but she insisted, said it was a misunderstanding. She showed up at the house." Luis hesitated. "They didn't get in. I didn't let them pass the gate. But they were very upset. The man yelled, said he had every right to be there. I told them to leave." I was speechless. She hadn't just crossed a line. She'd hopped a plane and tried to strong-arm her way into my space, using lies and doctored texts. Later that day, I got the screenshots from Luis. She had printed fake messages from me saying things like, "Of course you're welcome anytime," and "Make yourselves at home. It's your vacation too." The formatting was off. The language wasn't even how I text. But I knew what she was doing, trying to create a he said, she said scenario. Something she could spin into a victim story if it went south. That was when something snapped. She wanted to turn my success into her narrative. She wanted to force her way into my life, my space, my peace, because it drove her crazy that she couldn't control me anymore. So I started thinking, not about revenge in the traditional sense, but about truth, about how stories shape people, about how the version of me she told the world had cost me relationships, reputations, and peace of mind. I didn't want to humiliate her. I just wanted to take my name back. And if she was going to keep pushing, then maybe it was time to push back. I spent the next 2 weeks making a plan. The first thing I did was reach out to Alyssa, the travel blogger who'd done the original piece on my villa. I told her I had a follow-up story in mind. Something deeper. Something personal. She was intrigued. "Are you sure you want to go there?" she asked. "This could stir things up." "They're already stirred," I said. We spent several days outlining the article. I told her everything, within reason. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. I wanted the piece to explore what it's like to be the family scapegoat. The invisible one. The boring and broke brother who got left behind. I sent her photos, emails, voicemails, not to attack Leah directly, but to show what exclusion looks like in the small, everyday moments. And how sometimes, success isn't about winning. It's about surviving long enough to be heard. While she drafted the story, I worked on something else. I called Luis and asked if he'd be open to doing something a little unconventional. He laughed. "Senor Blake, at this point, I think you should build a moat." I smiled. "Not a moat, just a list." He agreed. So we put together a formal guest registration system. Nothing over the top, just a private link where I could approve visitors to the villa. A few questions, a waiver, and an agreement to respect the property and staff. Anyone not on the list? No entry. Ever. No exceptions. I bought a small security system, updated the gate code, and gave Luis full control. He loved it. Called it his mini fortress. Next, I set up a website. Just a simple one-page landing site for the villa, using its new name, Casa Horizonte. It had 3 sections. About the villa, photos, features, the ocean view, sustainability efforts, and the story of how it came to be, without naming names. Book a stay, for approved guests only. Private link required. The Journey, a personal essay I wrote titled For the Ones They Leave Behind. It was raw, honest, and very clear about one thing. The best revenge isn't payback. It's presence, living fully, refusing to disappear. I didn't publicize the site right away. Instead, I emailed the link to a few key people. Friends, colleagues, a few family members who'd always been kind but distant. I let them read, let them feel it. I didn't ask for sympathy. I just wanted them to know. Then I waited. The reaction came faster than I expected. Alyssa's follow-up article dropped on a Friday morning under the title Rewriting the Role. What happens when the black sheep builds a castle? It was beautiful, empathetic, not a hit piece, but a reflection on family, on power, on narrative. It included an excerpt from our interview where I said, "You can only be invisible for so long before you either fade away or finally speak." Within 24 hours, the article was being shared across platforms. Within 48, Leah texted me. "Leah, you're seriously making me look like a monster to the whole world now? What is wrong with you?" I didn't respond, because I wasn't done yet. That weekend, Luis called again. He sounded amused. "She came back," he said. "Your sister. Alone this time." She stood outside the gate for a long time. Didn't say a word. Just stared at the house. I didn't ask what she looked like. I didn't need to, because this wasn't about the house anymore. It was about the fact that no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't touch it, couldn't twist it, couldn't steal it. And the part that would eat her alive was knowing that the door had once been open, but she'd slammed it shut herself. It took 3 more days for Leah to break the silence. I was sitting out on the villa's back patio, sun low on the horizon, breeze playing with the edge of my linen shirt, when I saw the notification pop up. "Leah, so this is what you wanted? To humiliate me? To make everyone think I'm some villain while you play the martyr? Congrats, Blake. You win. I hope it was worth it." I stared at the message for a while, not sure whether to laugh or just shake my head. There was no apology, no ownership, just the usual, guilt masked as grace, victimhood wrapped in barbed wire. But at that point, it didn't sting anymore, because by then, the world had started seeing me, the real me, and that was worth everything. I never responded to her message. I didn't need to, because the fallout was already happening, and it was poetic. The article Alyssa published kept gaining traction, not viral in the sensationalist way, but steadily, meaningfully. It sparked conversations on Reddit threads, podcasts, and Twitter spaces about family scapegoats and what it means to reclaim your narrative. Therapists shared it. Self-help bloggers linked to it. Dozens of emails poured into my inbox, some from strangers, some from former classmates, some from extended family. One message, from my cousin Maya, who used to hang off Leah's every word at family parties, stuck with me. "I'm sorry I never stood up for you. I didn't realize how much you went through. Reading your story, it made me reflect on a lot. Thank you for writing it." Another came from my Aunt Claire, who'd once told me I was too quiet to ever stand out. "That villa is beautiful, Blake, but your piece is even more beautiful. I hope one day we can catch up, on your terms." And that's what it had become. On my terms. Because for years, every interaction with my family was on their terms. Their conditions. Their rules. I was invited when I was convenient, when I fit a mold. And when I didn't, I was erased. But now things had flipped. Not out of revenge. Not really. But out of truth finally rising to the surface. Then came the twist I never expected. A few weeks after Leah's failed stunt at the villa, she and Max separated. It wasn't public at first, just whispers through the grapevine, muted posts, changes in last names on social media. But eventually, the details trickled in through mutuals and group chats. Apparently, Max had grown exhausted by Leah's obsession with appearances, her need to one-up everyone, her manipulative tactics. He'd seen how she'd treated me over the years and, according to one source, told her, "If that's how you treat your own brother, how long before it's me?" The irony wasn't lost on me. The person who'd spent a decade treating me like I didn't matter had finally found herself on the outside looking in. And not because I lashed out, not because I got angry, but because I stopped giving her anything to twist. No more explanations. No more reactions. No more access. She imploded on her own. Later that summer, my parents reached out again. This time, it was different. The call wasn't to convince me. It wasn't to guilt me. It was quiet, measured. My dad's voice came through the line. I read your piece, he said. I waited. I didn't know half of what you went through. I stayed silent. Then he added, I should have. That's on me. And for once, he didn't follow it up with a defense of Leah, or a plea to let things go, or a half-baked justification. He just sat in it. Thanks for saying that, I finally replied. I don't expect you to come back to the fold, he said. But I'd like to be part of your life, if you'll let me. As just your dad. Not the fixer. Not the peacemaker. Just me. I told him I'd think about it. And I did. But not right away. Because the more I reflected, the more I realized that some chapters need to be closed fully before new ones can begin. And I wasn't done writing the final page of this one yet. There was one thing left to do. You see, I'd been approached by a mid-tier documentary channel, one of those online platforms that tells real-life stories with high production value and minimal dramatization. They'd read the article, seen the villa site, and wanted to do a short feature. At first, I declined. I didn't want my face out there. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about every quiet kid who sat at the dinner table while their siblings mocked them. Every boring sibling left off the invite list. Every scapegoat told to be grateful for crumbs. So I agreed. The shoot took 2 days. They filmed me at the villa, walking the beach, cooking in the kitchen, working on my laptop, showing the drone footage I'd captured. I told the story calmly, not to shame anyone, just to show what quiet rebuilding looks like. How dignity doesn't always come in loud victories, but in soft, consistent growth. The final segment was shot on the back patio, sun dipping low, same place I'd read Leah's last message. The interviewer asked, if your sister were watching this right now, what would you want her to know? I paused, then said, that piece isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn. And once you lose the right to be part of someone's piece, they don't owe you a second chance. That clip went semi-viral. And this time, nobody misunderstood me. The comments were filled with people thanking me, sharing their own stories, finding a piece of themselves in mine. Leah never reached out again. Not after the documentary. Not after the article passed 1 million views. Not after the podcast episode 1 guested on titled, From Exclusion to Ownership. She vanished. Or maybe, she just ran out of narratives to control. Because here's the thing people like her never expect. When you finally let go of needing their approval. When you finally stop trying to be included in rooms that only diminish you. When you build something of your own, brick by brick, while they're too busy mocking the foundation. You win. And not in the petty, gotcha way, but in the you sleep at night, you breathe easier, you laugh more freely kind of way. Now, I still live part-time at the villa. I still run my company. Still surf in the mornings. Still walk the beach at sunset. Sometimes I host friends. Sometimes I write. And sometimes, on rare, quiet nights, I reread the original message that started it all. We're thinking July for the Bahamas trip. It still makes me smile. Because the answer never changed. Sorry. It's only for people who are interesting enough. And now the world finally understands what I meant. I didn't exile her from my world. She just never imagined I'd build one without her.